This video features the best builds for all of the brawlers currently in Brawl Stars. This video took me a very long time to make, just like my other ones, so hope you all enjoy. Let's go ahead and begin. Alright, to start things off, let's go ahead and talk about our first brawler, Shelly. For her gadget, go ahead and run Clay Pigeon. You need this gadget so you can just increase your main attack range and help you hit more enemies to help you charge up your super. As far as the star power goes, go ahead and use Band-Aid. At least whenever Shelly falls below 40% health, she'll be gaining back a couple thousand health, which is always helpful to keep her alive. Also run the damage gear because you're probably going to be getting close to a lot of enemies dropping below 50% health, so getting the 50% extra damage is helpful. Use the gadget charge gear because Clay Pigeons is just that helpful. You need to be having another one to help you throughout the match. And of course, use her hypercharge double barrel because it increases her super to be 33% larger. I mean, it's so good. Next brawler is going to be Nita. For her gadget, go ahead and use Fox Fur. This will just give Bruce a 35% shield for the next 3 seconds to help him stay alive. Go ahead and use the Bear With Me star power as well. It combines very well with Fox Fur. Whenever Nita hits an enemy, then Bruce will recover over 1,000 health. But whenever Bruce hits somebody, then Nita will recover 1,000 health. I mean, it's just a fantastic star power. As far as gears go, the first one I recommend is going to be damage gear. Of course, you can't go wrong with dealing more damage, and especially with Nita not dealing the most amount of damage per second, so go ahead and use damage gear. And then finally, since she does have the pet power, increasing Bruce by another 25%, and that's just going to make him that much stronger. Let's not forget Nita's hypercharge hyper bearing. This will just make Bruce even stronger, getting that increase in movement speed and increase in health. I mean, Bruce is going to be a menace now. Our next brawler is going to be Colt. For his gadget, go ahead and use Speed Loader. Whenever you're low on ammo, just go ahead and pop this gadget and you'll instantly reload 2 bars of ammo. Let's go. For his star power, go ahead and use Magnum Special. This will just increase Colt's attack and bullet speed by another 11%, which is going to help him hit those enemies. For his gears, the first one I recommend is going to be damage gear. With Colt, you want to be shredding people as quickly as possible, and he doesn't have the most amount of health, so your chances of dropping low in health are high. And then finally, you gotta be combining all of this with the reload gear. I mean, you combine reload gear with the speed loader gadget. I mean, he is just reloading like a madman. And then of course, he has his hypercharge dual wielding, which just increases his super to be 120% wider, which will help you hit more enemies and just be that much more destructive. Our next brawler is going to be Belle. Go ahead and use the Stomper gadget. This will just interrupt his super wherever you activate the gadget, and this will slow down enemies for 1.5 seconds. Combine this with the Tough Guy star power, and whenever you fall below 40% health, hey, you'll get a 30% shield, which will help you stay alive. For his gears, the first one I recommend is going to be the damage gear. Run damage gear because kind of like Shelly, you gotta be getting close up and personal as a shotgun brawler, so your chances of dropping in health are high too. And of course, you gotta use the supercharge gear. He does have it. It'll help him charge his super 10% faster, and with Bull, his super is very important. And finally, use his hypercharge Jaws of Steel. I definitely recommend buying it because as long as you're using your super with the hypercharge, it'll decrease all damage taken by 80%, which, it's disgusting. Our next brawler is gonna be Brock. Go ahead and use the Rocket Laces gadget to help you just dodge incoming attacks, jump over obstacles, and just help you stay alive. Also, go ahead and use the Rocket number 4 star power just to give you that extra rocket to fire, will help you maintain control and pressure on the map. Also run the damage gear because, you know, Brock doesn't really have the most amount of health, and he can also benefit from dealing damage while maintaining pressure. And of course, he does have the reload gear, which will help him, of course, reload that extra bar of ammo that he has with the Rocket number 4 star power. So all of this really pairs very well together. And don't forget, with Brock's brand new hypercharged Rocket Barrage, you gotta be using it because he can fire all those extra rockets and it can help you just cover more area and do more damage. Our next brawler is gonna be El Primo, and I recommend going the Suplex Supplement gadget. This gadget is just helpful to just yeet people over your shoulders, get them in a hit stun, or have them drop the ball, and that can help you just get people down. Also, go ahead and run his El Fuego star power because as long as you jump onto people, you'll burn them for an extra 1700 damage for the next 4 seconds, and that is guaranteed every time. Also, I recommend going with the speed gear because most of the time you want to be playing El Primo on maps that have bushes anyway, so getting a speed boost when you're running through the bushes is going to help him get closer to the enemies. And then finally, kind of like Bull, El Primo also does have the supercharge gear, which will help him get his super, and El Primo's super is another very important part to his kit. And something that's new about El Primo is he does now have a hypercharged gravity leap, so I definitely recommend getting it, pulling people in when he's using his super instead of knocking people away. It's a great aspect that he has now. Our next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Barley. For his gadget, I definitely recommend getting the Sticky Syrup Mixer. This is just a fantastic gadget to keep aggro brawlers away in this meta and just help him just stay alive. Also, run medical use. This will also help him stay alive because he doesn't have to stop attacking to heal. As long as he's shooting, he'll gain 456 health from each attack. I also recommend running the damage gear because with Barley, you know, he's probably one of the weaker throwers, so he can benefit from getting a little bit of a damage buff. And then finally, go ahead and use the gadget charge gear because Sticky Syrup Mixer can absolutely come in clutch in this this aggressive meta like I said, so it won't hurt to have an extra gadget. Our next brawler is going to be Poco, and I recommend going with the tuning fork gadget. Being able to heal all allies near you for 740 health for the next 5 seconds can just help you be that much of a better healer throughout the matches to keep your team alive. Also go ahead and run the Screeching Solo Star Power. This one actually is better than the Capo because you want to be dealing damage to the enemies and getting value from your super. If you can super your teammates and also hit the enemies at the same time, that is what makes you a good Poco player. I also recommend running the damage gear as well. Even though you're not really trying to deal a lot of damage, this also does help you heal up your teammates too. And then finally run the gadget charge gear because tuning fork is actually a fantastic gadget and it can help you and your teammates really heal up in tight situations. Our next brawler is going to be Rosa, and I recommend going with the unfriendly bushes gadget. As long as the enemies are standing in the bushes, they'll take damage and they'll also be slowed down for the next 3 seconds. This can help Rosa go ahead and catch up to the enemies because she doesn't have the longest attack range. For her star power, go ahead and use Thorny Gloves. I mean, it pairs up very well with her super, and that is when you need to be absolutely just rushing in and destroying the enemies as quickly as possible. For her gears, I recommend running the speed gear. It pairs very well with unfriendly bushes because if you're running at the enemies while they're slowed down in the bushes, you have that speed boost and there's no way they're going to be able to outrun you. Also pair this up with the damage gear because if you're low during your super and you have Thorny Gloves as well, you're going to be really packing a punch against those enemies. And of course, you can't forget about Rosa's hypercharged grasping roots. You gotta be getting it. It is definitely still worth it even though she isn't the greatest brawler right now. Our next brawler is going to be Jessie, and you gotta run the spark plug gadget. As long as there's enemies near the scrappy turret, they'll be slowed down for a couple seconds, and this can help Jessie really hit more shots. Also, by combining this with the energized star power, just constantly attacking and shooting that turret, keeping it alive is gonna frustrate the enemies greatly. Speaking of frustrating the enemies greatly, go ahead and use the pet power gear as well. Increasing the scrappy turret's power by an additional 25% is going to make it that much more difficult for the enemies to take it down. And finally, use the damage gear as well to help Jessie just deal that much more damage. She could definitely benefit from it. And finally, to make things even more annoying for the enemies, run the hypercharged Scrappy 2.0. It's definitely a lot better now that they increased the supercharge rate, so yeah, I definitely recommend getting this hypercharge. Our next brawler is going to be Dynamike, and you need to be using Satchel Charge. This gadget is just so clutch because you can stun the enemies for that 1.5 seconds and it can easily help you get a kill. Also, by combining this with Demolition, being able to deal an additional 1600 damage with this super hull, nobody's gonna be able to survive that. Something that does pair very well with this Satchel Charge gadget is running the Gadget Charge gear. Having another gadget to use throughout the match because Dynamike really relies on this gadget to like at least be somewhat meta. And then finally use the damage gear. As long as he's dropping below that 50% health, dealing that extra damage, Dynamike can always take it. And then finally use this hypercharged boomer. I mean, being able to spawn all those smaller bombs whenever he uses it, you're probably going to be hitting a lot of people and dealing immense amounts of damage. Our next brawler is going to be another thrower, and it's going to be Tick. For his gadget, use Last Hurrah. This will just help Tick stay alive against those aggressive brawlers, giving him a 50% shield for the next second. Also use the well-oiled star power because whenever you're not attacking, he already starts recovering health 2 seconds faster than normal, which will help him stay alive. Speaking of helping him stay alive, use the shield gear too. Tick has probably one of the lowest amounts of health in the game, so he needs this additional 900 health to help him stay alive. And something that makes him even more annoying is running the mythic gear Thick Head. Giving Tick's head an additional 1000 health is going to make it that much more annoying for the enemies to take it down. Let's not forget about Tick's hypercharged Headstrong. This will just cause Tick's head to chase after enemies faster and it'll spawn 6 mines after it explodes. I mean, it's okay. Now for our next brawler, we're going to be talking about 8-Bit. I highly recommend running cheat cartridge over extra credits, especially in tight situations where you're like about to die and you can teleport back to your turret. As long as it's safe, that's gonna help you stay alive and keep pressure on the map. As much as it pains me to say this, I guess you guys gotta use Boosted Booster. Even though I love Plugged In, Boosted Booster technically is the better one to just help you and your teammates deal more damage. Speaking of dealing more damage, use his epic gear, the Reload gear. Being able to reload an additional 50% faster will help him just get ammo back faster and just keep pressure on the map too. And then finally, with 8-Bit moving so damn slow, it wouldn't hurt you to run the speed gear. Since you have the speed gear, just try and run through as many bushes as you can to just help you move a little bit faster and get to the choke point much quicker. Our next brawler is going to be Rico. Without a doubt, you need to run multi-ball launcher. Especially in this aggressive meta where a lot of people are jumping onto you, dashing towards you, being able to just shoot all those balls out from you, then it's gonna help you do a lot of damage. Also, by running Robo Retreat, whenever Rico falls below 40% health, he runs 34% faster. That's just a weird number. I don't know why it's 34%. But anyway, it's gonna help you just stay alive because you can just run away and just retreat no problem. Now, the first gear we're gonna talk about is gonna be the damage gear. Whenever you're low and your Robo Retreat kicks in, then your damage gear will also kick in. So not only will you be running away quicker, but you'll also be dealing more damage. And And of course, you gotta pair this up with the reload gear, so you'll be running faster, reloading faster, and also dealing more damage. I mean, it's a disgusting build for Rico. Our next brawler is gonna be Darryl. Now, after all these years, Tara Barrel is still gonna be the better gadget. Slowing down enemies around him for an additional 5 seconds helps him just catch up to people as a shotgun brawler. Also, combining this with rolling reload, just using his super and doubling his reload speed for the next 5 seconds helps him just get ammo back quicker so he can burst down those enemies. Also, with Darryl being a short range shotgun brawler, it wouldn't hurt to run the speed gear. He can use bushes to just run faster and get closer to the enemies, because with the shotgun you need to be getting close up to them to be dealing a lot of damage. Also, running the damage gear, since you are a shotgun brawler, your chances of dropping in health are high and he can benefit from dealing the extra damage. Our next brawler is going to be Penny. For her gadget, go ahead and use Salty Barrel. Being able to just place down this gadget, especially when there's aggro brawlers pressuring you or to just tank shots for you, it's a clutch way to help Penny stay alive. I also recommend running Heavy Coffers to just give you that additional 100% wider cone after each hit to hopefully help you hit more enemies that are standing behind the other enemies. Now, one of the only reasons why Penny is actually a very fun brawler is because her mortar just rains hell on people, so use the pet power here. Being able to increase that turret's power by an additional 25%, it's going to make it so irritating for the enemies to just stay alive against it. And to make things even worse, you can also use the damage gear, because if you're dropping in health, you can do more damage with your coins and just melt people. Alright, the next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Carl. For his gadget, it's still better to use Flying Hook. Being able to just activate this gadget, fly closer to the enemies when combining it with his super is a great way to not waste any time. Speaking of his super, run the Protective Pirouette Star Power. Being able to decrease the amount of damage that he takes by 35% when he's in his super, that just helps him stay alive while he's shredding the enemies. And something that can help him even more with his super is going to be the damage gear. Since you're going to be right up in the enemy's faces, they're probably going to be dealing a lot of damage to you, so hopefully the damage gear can kick in and help you finish off that enemy before they finish you. And then finally, I guess go ahead and use the speed gear. He can always benefit from moving faster, because it does take a while for his pickaxe to come back if you're shooting it far away from him. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Jacky. For her gadget, I recommend using Pneumatic Booster. You need to be getting this additional 25% movement speed for the next 4 seconds to get closer to those enemies. And then once you finally do get closer to those enemies, hopefully Counter Crush can help you take them down. Jacky will end up converting 30% of the damage that she takes back onto the enemies, and that can help her really finish them off quicker. And this can be amplified even more if you're using the damage gear. Again, with all these short range brawlers, it's better to use the damage gear since you're going to be getting close to them and probably dropping below 50% quite a bit. And then just to help you get closer to the enemies, besides using Pneumatic Booster, is running the speed gear. You need to be using those bushes to help you get closer to the enemies, because her attack range is just not the greatest in this game. And of course, we can't forget about our Hypercharged Seismic event. It does help because it slows down nearby enemies for 1.5 seconds, and this can help her finish off those enemies. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Gus. For his gadgets, it's still better to use Cookie Popper. Even though there is no more knockback, at least you can deal 2000 damage whenever the enemies are standing near your spirit, so just use this gadget still. As far as his star power goes, you still gotta run Spirit Animal. This just makes him an even better support brawler, because the Spooky will increase the damage of a teammate by 25% for 5 seconds to just help them finish off the enemy while they have that shield. Now, Gus doesn't have the greatest unload speed, so it could help him to use the damage gear, so at least whenever you are hitting the enemies, at least you're getting rewarded by it by maybe dealing another 50% extra damage if you're below 50% health. And then finally, use the speed gear. It is helpful with him to move a little bit faster so he can get to those choke points a lot quicker. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Bo, and shockingly now the better gadget to use is going to be Tripwire. Since Super Totem has been nerfed into the ground, it's just better to use Tripwire. Even though it's not the greatest gadget, it actually is better than Super Totem now. As far as the star power goes, Snare Bear is still going to be pretty good, because as long as those enemies get trapped in those mines, they are going to be stunned for 2 seconds, and hey, that gives you and your teammates a lot of time to just burst them down while they're trapped. To help you deal more damage while they are stunned, run the damage gear. Bo actually does a pretty good amount of damage per second, so being able to have the damage gear as well is a huge help. And then finally, having the reload gear, reloading 50% faster, oh my god, it just makes Bo an incredibly annoying brawler to face, despite him being very easy too. Alright, our next brawler is going to be my girlfriend's favorite brawler, Ems. For her gadget, you still need to be using Friend Zoner. In this very aggressive meta where you have bronze Edgars playing in Mythic, you need to be using this gadget to push them away. Also, even though both of the star powers are good, Bad Karma is going to be better. Being able to just deal an additional 25% damage per hit just helps her melt down those enemies even quicker. Now, hey, those Edgars are literally everywhere, so you need to be using the gadget charge gear too. Having another Friend Zoner gadget to push away those stupid Edgar mains is going to help you guys stay alive. And then finally, once you do push them away, hey, go ahead and run the damage gear. The damage gear will kick in, help you deal more damage, and just get those Edgars out of my game. Come on, man. Anyway, our next brawler is going to be Stu. Now, even though both gadgets are going to be good, I still recommend Breakthrough. it's just such a versatile gadget because you can break the walls and just other obstacles in general to your team's advantage, which I really like. Also, I recommend running Gasso Heal even though both star powers are really good too. Just being able to heal 580 health every time you use your super, I mean, hey, that just helps him stay alive. He doesn't have to stop attacking to heal, just keep on using your super. Something that can even amplify the Gasso Heal healing as well is using the damage gear. Now, it actually can amplify how much you heal, so that is actually one of the reasons why you should use damage gear. Also, to help Stu stay alive while he's dashing all over the map, use the shield gear. Getting that extra 900 health while he's going aggressive, it can truly help him stay alive because he is one of those brawlers that needs to carry his team. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Piper. In most case scenarios, unless you're playing against Edgars, it's better to use the homemade recipe gadget. Even though the homing isn't as strong as it used to be because it got nerfed, it's still helpful to finish off those enemies that are just slightly out of your range. Also, without a doubt, you have to be using snappy sniping. This is undisputedly the better star power to use because she reloads almost half a bar of ammo instantly whenever she hits her shots. Also, something to help her stay alive a lot longer in the game is running the shield gear. Of course, with these sharpshooters, they don't have a lot of health, so getting that extra 900 health is going to help her drastically. And then finally go ahead and use the gadget charge gear because having another homemade recipe to just home in on those enemies and get them down, it can truly help in other game modes like bounty, wipe, or knockout. Alright, our next brawler is going to be the queen herself, Pam. For her gadget, now actually Scrap Sucker is going to be the better one. This is just a great gadget to just take down a lot of like high bursting, high HP brawlers at a close range because she can just drain all their ammo away. Also, by running Mama Squeak, she can do 912 damage a second whenever people are standing in her health turrets raised. I mean, that's disgusting. Now, something that Pam actually can benefit a little bit from is dealing more damage, so use the damage gear. Unless you're hitting enemies from extremely close up, you're not going to be dealing a lot of damage. Most of the time, you're going to be chipping people away. And then finally, to make Pam an even better of a healer, use her Mythic Gear Super Turret. This will just increase the healing of Pam's turret by 20%, making it that much more difficult for the enemies to take down you and your teammates. Our next brawler is going to be the best brawler in the game, Frank. For his gadgets, go ahead and use Irresistible Attraction. I mean, increasing your next main attack by 100% and you pull them in closer to, that's like his dream gadget. That's exactly what he needs in his build. Now, even though a lot of people are using Sponge so they can be the thickest Frank possible, Power Grab is going to be the better star power to use. Whenever you defeat an enemy, which is rare with Frank, you get an additional 50% damage buff for the next 12 seconds, which is a very long time. Now, since Frank does have a lot of health, even if you're not using the Sponge star power, you need to be using the health gear. He'll just recover health 50% more effectively, which will help him stay alive and tank more shots for you and your team. And then whenever you actually do fall below 50% health with this thick Frank, go ahead and use the damage gear. It can actually help you take down the enemies because you need to be as efficient and effective as possible whenever hitting your shots. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Bibi. For her gadget, go ahead and use Vitamin Booster. Healing up over 3600 health every single time you pop this gadget, as long as you stay alive, can help her stay alive too. Now, both star powers are really good, but Home Run is going to be better. Getting that additional 12% movement speed will help Bibi just dodge shots a lot easier and also get closer to the enemies. As far as gears go, you gotta run the speed gear. Combining this with Home Run, being able to move quicker in the bushes is just a huge plus for Bibi. And then finally, use the damage gear because Bibi has one of the shortest attack ranges in the game, thus making you get closer to the enemies, thus making you take more damage. So yeah, go ahead and use damage gear. You're going to be dropping in health. And now Bibi actually has a hypercharge, which is one of the reasons why she's not one of the worst brawlers in the game anymore, so you need to be using her hypercharge. Our next brawler is going to be B. For B, you need to still be using Rattled Hive. Spawning in those 4 angry bees that circle up, and they can go up to 1200 damage a pop, so it can really help you finish off enemies quicker. Also, by running Insta B-Load, unless you're like a pro and can hit every single shot, you're going to be missing your supercharge shot quite a bit, and at least this will give you another chance. For her gears, you gotta run the first gear I'd recommend is going to be Shield Gear. Use the Shield Gear because she doesn't have a lot of health as well like the other sharpshooter brawlers, so this will help her stay alive. And then finally, Damage Gear will just help her do even more damage with that supercharged shot. You can like shred a lot of the brawlers in this game with that one shot. The next brawler is going to be Nani. As fun as Warp Blast is to use throughout the match, you gotta still be using Return to Sender. Being able to tank the next incoming shot and return 80% of it to the enemy that shot it at you can help you finish that person off. And then after that, go ahead and use the autofocus star power with Peep. Peep can deal up to an additional 2000 extra damage based on his travel distance, which can help you after you return all that damage back to the person. Now for her gears, I definitely want to say go damage. Even though Nani already does quite a bit of damage, she can benefit always by dealing more damage. And then use the shield gear. A lot of these sharpshooters need more health. You know, Nani actually has more than like B or Piper, but hey, she can benefit from the 900 health too. Now everybody's favorite brawler in the game, all of my bronze 1 players, shout out to you guys, Edgar. Now for Edgar, go ahead and use Let's Fly. Edgar's super is probably one of the most important parts about his kit. He needs it to get closer, so charging it 525% faster for the next 4 seconds is huge for him. And also with Edgar, when you jump onto somebody, you need to be finishing them off as quickly as possible, so use Hard Landing. Something that can help him charge up his super quicker is using the Supercharge Epic Gear. Charging his super 10% faster whenever he's like just standing around or hitting the enemies is clutch for Edgar. And then to finish off the enemies even faster, go ahead and use the damage gear. This actually does stack up with his healing as well, so you can heal up more the more damage that you're dealing. And of course, the reason why Edgar is not an F tier or D tier brawler anymore is because of his hypercharge outburst. After using his super, he'll gain a charging speed and reload speed for a couple seconds, which can help him get a lot of team wipe shockingly. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Griff. For Griff, it's still nice to use the piggy bank gadget to just destroy walls, destroy cover, and actually if somebody gets hit by it, they'll take 1400 damage. And of course, the better star power to use is still going to be business resilience. Every 2 seconds, he'll regain 50% of his missing health, and that can help you when you need to constantly keep on attacking. Speaking of constantly attacking, at least Griff has the reload gear. Reloading 50% faster is going to make Griff that much more annoying to deal with. And you know what will make him even more annoying to deal with? Running the damage gear, allowing Griff to deal even more damage when he falls below 50% health. Oh my god, he's just an absolute menace. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Grom. For Grom, use the radio check gadget. This gadget is just fantastic when needing to deal a lot of damage on a stationary target because he shoots out those 3 buds. For his star power, it's still nice to have X Factor because you can deal up to 30% extra damage at max distance, which is crazy. Something that can help you deal even more damage is running the damage gear. Imagine combining that with the X Factor at max distance. Oh, you can deal like couple thousand damage just from one main attack. And then finally, with radio check actually being a very solid gadget, it's nice to have the gadget charge gear. Having an additional radio check gadget can help you deal more damage and just keep pressure on the map. Our next brawler is actually going to be Bonnie. Now for her gadgets, it's nice to have Sugar Rush. Since Bonnie moves so goddamn slow, it's nice to get that 30% speed buff for the next 5 seconds to help her move faster. And of course, running Black Powder to just increase the range of Bonnie's Star Launcher by 36% can help her just launch very far away to those enemies that are trying to hide from you. Now the only reason why Bonnie is actually one of the best brawlers in the game right now is because she got a buff to her Supercharge. So why wouldn't you use the Supercharge gear to help Bonnie charge up her super even faster? And then of course, Bonnie already does a lot of damage, but hey, she can benefit from dealing more, so go ahead and run the damage gear too. Our next brawler is going to be Gale. For Gale, use the Twister gadget to just spawn that tornado, especially when aggro brawlers jump onto you, they're going to be bounced right away from you. As far as the star power goes, it's nice to have freezing snow. Slowing down those enemies for half a second will just help you get closer to them or even help your teammates get closer to them too. For his gears, actually it's nice to have the shield gear. Even though Gale doesn't have like a low amount of health, he is still kind of a weaker brawler, so having the shield will help him stay alive. And then finally, since he doesn't do a lot of DPS unless you're hitting like almost all of your snowballs every attack, it's nice to have the damage gear too. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Colette. Even though Colette has fallen off, she still has a very fantastic gadget, which is going to be Gotcha. Every time Colette hits a shot for the next 5 seconds, it will heal 80% of the damage dealt, which helps her stay alive in aggro situations. Also, by running Push It, this pretty much guarantees her to charge half of her super whenever she hits an enemy, and that is so important with Colette. Now, whenever using your super and you are low on health, it's nice to have the damage gear to deal even more damage onto whatever you're trying to use your super on. And then since Gotcha is such a dominant gadget for Colette and helps her stay alive, it's nice to have another one to use, so run the gadget charge gear too. And something that makes Colette even more broken, even though it did get nerfed, is going to be her hypercharged teen spirit. Having that additional spirit that follows her is like dealing damage with a second super, so you need to be running this hypercharge. Alright, our next brawler is actually going to be Belle. With Belle, even though both gadgets can be good in their own situations, I still recommend going Nest Egg. Being able to trap those enemies and slow them down for 3 seconds can help you and your teammates just get that person down so they can't run away. Also, by running positive feedback, getting that additional 20% shield whenever she hits a shot, that can help her just tank incoming damage from other sharpshooter brawlers. Also, something to make Belle even more annoying is the fact that she has the reload gear. Obviously, it's just going to be more annoying to deal with. I mean, who wants to deal with a brawler that can just reload 50% faster? Nobody. And then stack all of this with the damage gear, with Belle being a sharpshooter and she drops below health quite a bit, she can benefit from dealing more damage. And something that's new with Belle, even though it's not the greatest hypercharge, it's actually her hypercharge magnetic. You can kind of think of it like Belle's super combined with homemade recipe. It's not the flashiest, but it is still helpful in a sense. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Ash. For his gadget, use Chill Pill. A full rage meter will help him recover 3200 health when it's popped, which will help him stay alive. Also, with Ash, he needs to be getting that rage bar up in the first place, so run the first bash star power. Whenever he gets hit by an enemy, he will actually charge up his rage 200% faster. Now, I know everybody wants me to say run the supercharge gear with Ash, but I actually recommend going speed gear instead. he needs to be running through those bushes, getting closer to the enemies because his delay is super annoying to deal with. And then finally, still not gonna recommend a supercharge, you need to be running damage gear. Ash surprisingly is a pretty underrated brawler because of how much damage he can deal when he's fully raged up, so even combine that with his star power, I mean, oh, it's disgusting. Alright, our next brawler is gonna be Lola. For Lola, run freeze frame. Being able to have Lola's ego tank shots for you by getting an additional 50% shield for 4 seconds can help Lola stay alive. And then I also recommend running sealed with a kiss, because projectiles from Lola's ego will heal allies that are caught in its path by 208 health. This is actually an underrated way to heal up yourself and your teammates to help you stay alive and keep pressure throughout the game. You know what else help you keep pressure and stay alive throughout the game is running the reload gear. Another brawler that's very annoying with the reload gear. I mean, why would they give Lola the reload gear? And then finally, if it wasn't already annoying having to deal with damage from a second Lola, now you have to deal with her having the damage gear, dealing 50% extra damage even though the ego doesn't benefit from it. I mean, Lola's still getting the damage buff. Oh god, it's annoying to deal with. Alright, anyways, our next brawler is going to be Sam. For Sam, go ahead and use the magnetic field gadget. This gadget is so important because you can pop this gadget, and as long as the enemies are near your knuckle busters, you can suck them in and just help you get them down. And also, when you're grabbing your knuckle busters off the ground, use hardy recovery. At least every single time you grab it, you'll recover 20% of your missing health, which helps Sam stay alive. Now, Sam also does have a pretty short attack range, so use the speed gear. Run through the bushes, get closer to the enemies so you can actually deal some damage to them. And then it's also to always run the damage gear too. If you don't know what to run, use the damage gear. Our next brawler is going to be Mandy. For Mandy, use the cookie crumbs gadget. Being able to just pierce through the enemies and the environment with your next main attack can help you just get down the enemy that's trying to heal up and stay away from you. For star power, is still nice to have in my sights. Being able to shoot 20% faster while Mandy's focus is going to make it that much more difficult for the enemies to dodge your shots. Now, the first gear I recommend with Mandy is going to be the damage gear. Mandy can actually deal quite a bit of damage as probably one of the farthest range sharpshooter brawlers, so it can help her with having more damage. And then finally, with cookie crumbs being such a good gadget as well with her, use the gadget charge gear. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Maisie. For Maisie, it's still nice to have disengage. You can either stun enemies for half a second when you dash near them, or it'll help you when you combine it with your super. Speaking of her super, it's also useful to run tremors. Whenever you hit enemies with your shockwave super, you'll slow them down for 2 seconds, and that'll make it even more difficult for the enemies to escape your shots. Now, since disengage is such an important part to Maisie's kit, it's nice to run the gadget charge gear. Having an additional disengage gadget to help you dash away, dash forward, it's just great in general. And then finally, Maisie does already deal a lot of damage, but it's nice to deal more, so run damage gear too. Now, even though Maisie isn't the greatest brawler, at least she still has her hypercharge aftermath. Being able to shoot out all those projectiles from her super in all directions can help her hit more shots and help her chain her super. Now, the ultimate best brawler in the game is next, and that's going to be Hank. For Hank, run his water balloons gadget. Your next attack will end up slowing down the enemy for 3 seconds, and that can help you close down a distance so you can hit that enemy. It's also great to pair this with his It's Gonna Blow star power, because after you slow them down with this star power, as long as it's charged up over 80%, you'll gain an additional 10% movement speed to help you get closer to them. Speaking of getting closer to the enemies, it's nice to run the speed gear. Use the speed gear to your advantage, run through the bushes, and combine this with It's Gonna Blow. It can help you get closer to the enemies a lot faster. And then I hope you deal more damage because, you know, Hank is probably one of the worst brawlers in the game. Realistically, it's nice to have more damage with the damage gear. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Pearl. For Pearl, go ahead and use Overcooked. This gadget is still so disgusting even though it got a nerf. Dealing 25% extra damage over the next 3 seconds can really help you just deal more damage, and all that damage is guaranteed. For star power, Overcooked is combined greatly with Heat Shield. As long as her heat bar is charged up over 80%, she'll be reducing all the damage taken by 20%, which will help her stay alive. Now, since Overcooked is such a fantastic gadget, it wouldn't hurt you to have another one, so run the gadget charge gear. And to even amplify the amount of damage you can do with Overcooked, you run the damage gear too to just do even more damage. Now, even though her hypercharged pyrolytic is kinda underwhelming, at least it can leave the burning area on the ground for 4.5 seconds, and realistically, who the hell would walk over that though? Alright, our next brawler are gonna be the twins, Larry and Lawrie. Without a doubt, the better gadget is gonna be Order Fall Back. The twins will end up dashing towards each other, and they will both heal up for 25% of their maximum health, which will help both of them stay alive longer. Now, even though Protocol Protect did get a nerf, it's still going to be the better star power to use. Transferring 30% incoming damage to Lawrie instead is going to help Larry stay alive a lot longer. Now, they keep on nerfing Larry's damage, so you need to be using the damage gear. Since he is a thrower, he will be dropping in health, so dealing the extra damage will help him. Now, with Fallback being one of the last positive things that Larry and Lawrie have in their kit, you gotta be running the gadget charge gear. Having an additional one will help you guys stay alive and heal up every single time you use the gadget. Now, the best brawler in the game is going to be Angelo, so let's go ahead and talk about him next. For his gadget, run Stinging Flight. You can kind of think of this gadget like a Rocket Laces gadget for Brock, just being able to jump very far away, dodge incoming attacks, and just jump over obstacles is very helpful. And since you can't have auto regeneration when charging your main attack, it's nice to have the Empower Star Power. Being able to heal 600 health per second whenever Angelo is standing inside of his super kind of compensates for that auto regeneration that you're not getting. For his gears, it's nice to have the damage gear. Angelo already does a lot of damage, especially when combined with his super and his charge up all the way to the max, so use the damage gear too. And then finally, with him being another sharpshooter brawler, not having the most amount of health, use the shield gear to help him stay alive while he's charging that main attack. Alright, moving on to the mythics, the first brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Mortis. For Mortis, run the Survival Shovel gadget, reloading faster for the next 4 seconds, which is help him continue pressure and go aggro onto the enemies. When he does finally kill somebody, it's nice to have the Creepy Harvest Star Power helping you. Restoring 20% of his maximum health whenever you defeat an enemy will help him stay alive and help him just keep on going aggressive. Now, since Survival Shovel is such an important part to his kit, I recommend going Gadget Charge gear. This just gives him another opportunity to just go aggressive and just keep on reloading much faster. And then finally, use the damage gear. If you fall below 50% health when you're going aggressive, the damage gear will kick in and hopefully it'll help you finish off whoever you're attacking. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Tara, and the gadget we're going to talk about is going to be Support from Beyond. With this gadget, at least Tara can spawn in the couple weak shadows that can either scout bushes or just deal damage, tank damage. It's helpful for her. And then also using Healing Shade whenever she uses her super and spawns in that shadow, it can help you and your teammates stay alive since you're going to be getting free heals. And what's even more annoying about Tara is she has the pet power gear, so go ahead and use that to make the pet even more stronger. And then finally, use the speed gear. With Tara, you want to be playing on maps that have bushes anyways, so go ahead and use her in the bushes, run faster and get closer to the enemies. Alright, the next brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Jean. It's still nice to use Lamp Blowout to kind of just push people away, kind of like M's friend zoner gadget to push away those stupid Edgar mains. And it's also be quite a good healer yourself. Run Magic Puffs. You can heal all teammates around you by 576 health a second, which can help you and your teammates just keep pressure on the map. For his gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be his Mythic gear, Talk to the Hand. This is kind of helpful to just extend Jean's Magic Hand super so you can hopefully hit more shots. Finally, run the Vision gear. Since your goal with Jean is to kind of just poke people away, chip them down, when they're hiding inside the bushes, they're going to be visible for a lot longer than they think. And finally, don't forget about Jean's Hypercharge Hyper Hands. Honestly, the Hypercharge is not going to be that good because it's basically like committing suicide into yourself. Next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Max. For her gadget, go ahead and use Phase Shifter. This is a great gadget to kind of just dash forward or even dodge incoming attacks. For star power, use Run and Gun. As long as you're constantly moving with this star power, you're just going to be reloading so much quicker. Now for gears, the first one I suggest is going to be the Damage gear. With Max, you want to be going as aggressive as you can, so getting that extra damage is going to help you get down those enemies. And then with Phase Shifter being such a great gadget for Max, use the Gadget Charge gear too. Also, don't forget about Max's Hypercharge Unlimited Energy. She can go ahead and toss the energy drink to her teammates and increase the movement speed and additional 25% supercharge. I mean, it's so broken. Next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Mr. P. The gadget I recommend you guys use is going to be Service Belle. Being able to buff up that current porter that spawned to increase the damage by 228 and health by 1360 is going to make that porter so much harder to defeat. For the star power, use Revolving Door. This will end up causing all of the porters from the home base to now spawn with 20% more health and 30% more damage. So combining that with the Service Belle gadget, oh my god, this is going to be incredibly annoying. And you know what make it even more annoying is using the pet power with Mr. P. That's right, increasing the pet power by an additional 25% will make the porters that much more unkillable. And then just a cherry on top is going to be the Damage gear. Since Mr. P can't really deal with aggressive brawlers, if he does get low, maybe the Damage gear can help him finish off that person. Next brawler is going to be Sprout. For Sprout, you must use the Transplant gadget. This is a great way to kind of just frustrate the enemy team. You don't have to be constantly charging up your super. As long as you get one, you can just take it and then place it again. For the star power, I definitely want to go with Overgrowth, because every 5 seconds the next seed bomb will explode with a larger explosion radius. This will help you hit more shots, especially with enemies that might be just slightly outside of your seed bomb. For the gears, you gotta go with Supercharge. Sprout super is what makes him probably one of the most OP brawlers when played correctly. After the Supercharge gear, run the Damage gear. You can't ever go wrong with getting more damage as a thrower to just make him even more annoying to deal with. And now Sprout actually has a Hypercharge Thorns. It isn't the greatest Hypercharge, but if there are enemies that are standing right next to the hedge, they'll now take damage, which who would really be standing next to the hedge in the first place? Alright, our next brawler is going to be Byron. For the gadget, use Booster Shots. Even though you'll be firing 3 darts and only dealing 20% less damage or 40% less healing, it can be helpful to either heal up your teammates or still damage the enemies with 3 shots instead of 1. For the star power, it is still much more useful to use Injection. This is just going to be the better star power, because whether if you're piercing through multiple teammates or piercing through multiple enemies, every single 3.5 seconds, it can be helpful. For the gears, the first one is going to be the damage gear. With Byron, he's a sharpshooter, long-range brawler. He doesn't have a whole ton of health, so if he just do drop below 50%, that can help him heal or deal more damage. And then finally, with him not having a lot of health, like I just said, using the shield gear, giving him an extra 900 health can help him stay alive. Our next brawler is going to be Squeak. For the gadget, run residue. This is what makes him incredibly annoying because putting that slowing residue down, and it lasts for 6 seconds, will help you guys maintain control and pressure on the map. For the star power, I still recommend going chain reaction, because each opponent within the array of the sticky bombs explosion will increase the bombs damage by 15%. Squeak already has a terrible reload speed and terrible DPS, so if you can increase your damage by 15%, you gotta take it. For the gears, the first one is gonna be the damage gear. I just got done talking about how Squeak's DPS is pretty trash, so you can definitely go for a damage buff. And finally, Squeak doesn't have the most amount of health, so I recommend going the shield gear, helping him gain the little bit of extra health and helping him stay alive. Our next brawler is gonna be Lou, and I recommend going with the crowd syrup gadget. This instantly adds 50% freeze meter to the enemy standing inside a Lou's super, and this will just help you guys pair very well with his hypothermia star power. Because with the hypothermia star power, opponents lose up to 50% of their damage based on how frozen they are. So if you can end up freezing them with the crowd syrup gadget, depending on how frozen they are, that's just how much less damage they're going to be dealing because of the hypothermia star power. Now for the gears, the first one I gotta recommend is going to be the gadget charge gear. Since crowd syrup is so good to freezing up the enemies, getting them frozen on the ice, or having them deal less damage, you gotta have another gadget. And then finally, the other gear you guys gotta use is going to be the supercharge gear. Lou's super is probably one of the most important things about him because you can have the enemies either sliding on the ice or getting them frozen up. Getting your super is very important. And then finally, he does have his hypercharged slushy storm. It's critical that you guys get this hypercharge, instantly freezing him on the ice when you throw it down. I mean, that's just so broken. Alright, our next brawler is gonna be Ruffs. For the gadget, use take cover. This will just help you guys tank shots, especially if you're playing against single projectile brawlers. For the star power, use air superiority. This is a fantastic star power because the supply drop will now actually add 120% more damage to the drop, and it can actually destroy obstacles as well, which can help you and your teammates break walls when needed. The first gear I'm gonna recommend with Ruffs is going to be the shield gear. Him being a support brawler, he needs to be staying alive so that he can obviously support his teammates, so run the shield gear. And then finally also run the damage gear too. Ruffs doesn't have the most amount of DPS as well, so being able to have the damage gear and do a little bit more damage can help him defeat more enemies. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Buzz. For the gadget, go ahead and use reserve buoy. This will instantly give Buzz his next super. Even though the next torpedo throw doesn't stun opponents, it can be a great getaway or get closer to the enemy's tool. For star power, use Eyes Sharp. Being able to increase Buzz's supercharging area by an additional 33% will just help him just stay that much farther away. He doesn't have to get too close in order for him to charge his super. The first gear I'm going to recommend is going to be the damage gear. When you're up and personal right in the enemy's face, you're definitely going to be taking a lot of damage, and when you are dropping below that health, the damage gear is going to kick in and help you defeat the enemy. And the other gear is definitely going to have to be the health gear. Buzz has a ton of health, and so when you're needing to heal up, it'll just help you heal up that much quicker. And then finally, Buzz actually has a hypercharge now, which is going to be Buzz Watch. This is probably one of the most fun hypercharges in the game because Buzz's super can now be used again if he hits a wall. As long as you're hitting an enemy that is near a wall, you can still stun them, so this is a fantastic hypercharge for Buzz. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Fang. Even though Fang is falling off, he still has a really good gadget, which is going to be Roundhouse Kick. The fact that he can just stun enemies around him for half a second will just help him at least hit another shot, and who knows, it can help him charge up his next super. Speaking of charging up his next super, you have to still be using fresh kicks. Whenever Fang defeats an enemy with his super, he instantly gets his super back, which makes it so easy for Fang to chain and bounce off the enemies. The first gear I'm going to recommend is going to be the damage gear. Fang can definitely benefit from dealing a little bit of more damage since he has a terrible unload speed, so run this gear, and then also run the speed gear as well. Fang doesn't have the longest main attack range for his short range kicks, so if you can use bushes to kind of get closer to the enemies, it might help him charge up his super as well. And of course, Fang still has a hypercharge. It's not as broken as it used to be, but it's still a fantastic hypercharge because you can just go right through walls and drop popcorn, which deal a lot of damage too. Alright, our next brawler is going to be Eve, and the gadget you must use is going to be Gotta Go. This is another gadget kind of similar to Angelo's jumping one or Brock's jumping one. You can just leap as well, like over obstacles or incoming attacks, so it's great. Now the star power I recommend with Eve is going to be Unnatural Order. Reversing the order of the eggs that are shot by your egg shooter just make it so that you're guaranteed to have a higher chance of hitting that bigger egg. And then for the gears, the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the reload gear. Eve doesn't have the fastest reload speed, so if you can get that reload gear and help her shoot out more eggs, that's going to help her charge up her super. And speaking of her super, you got to use her mythic gear quadruplets, because now with this Mythic gear, Eve super will spawn an extra hatchling, which is another thing that the enemies are gonna have to shoot and look out for. It makes her super irritating. Alright, our next brawler is gonna be Janet. For the gadget, go ahead and use Drop the Base. Placing down that speaker that deals 196 damage per second to all the enemies within the radius. I mean, it's just a great scouting ability and prevents the enemies from healing up. For the star power, use Vocal Warm Up. It's so important that Janet charges up her main attack to go the full distance so she can hit the enemies, so charging it 30% faster is great for this star power. And then for the gears, the first one I recommend is going to be damage gear. Janet doesn't do a whole ton of DPS, especially with her taking forever for her to kind of focus in her main attack, so use damage. And then if you are playing on bushy maps, I recommend going speed gear as well. Being able to just run quicker through the bushes and get closer to the enemies while you're focusing your shot, it can help you hit more shots and get your super. The next brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Otis. Now, undisputedly, the best gadget for Otis is going to be Fat Splatter. Being able to place down that giant ink blob that deals 1150 damage over 3.8 seconds, it's a great way to kind of maintain control on the map. And without a doubt, you need to be using the ink refill star power. Shooting out an extra ink drop will help you chain up your super quicker, defeat enemies faster. I mean, it's a win-win for Otis. Now for the gears, the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the damage gear. Otis already has pretty good DPS, especially if you guys are using the ink refill star power, so go ahead and use the damage gear. This will help him even more. And then finally, with Otis' super being probably one of the best in the game, you gotta run the supercharge gear as well. For Otis to charge up his super 10% faster, also combining with the ink refill star power will just help him chain his super and get more kills and win more games. Our next brawler we're gonna talk about is gonna be Buster. For the gadget, it's still undisputedly gonna be slow-mo replay. Being able to just use his next main attack to pull in the enemies closer to him so he can deal more damage at a close range, hey, that is the perfect gadget for Buster. Also, he's gotta be using Kevlar Vest. It's mainly just very important that when he's using his super, he's basically immune to knockback, stuns, or slows, which is very important. And the first gear we're going to talk about is going to be the speed gear. You're going to want to be playing Buster on bushy maps so you can get closer to people, so you can yank them in with slow-mo replay. So yeah, use the speed gear. And then finally run the health gear too. Buster has quite a bit of health, so if you need to kind of just fall back and heal up, hey, this is what this gear is good for. Our next brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Gray. Now the gadget you want to run for Gray is going to be Walking Cane. Being able to just kind of shoot through the environment and yank people closer to is a great way to just increase your chances of hitting your shots. And then for the star power, use New Perspective. Being able to heal up over 1200 health every single time you go through his doors, I mean, it's a great way to just heal up every time you use it. Now the first gear I want to talk about is definitely going to be the damage gear. Gray doesn't do a whole ton of damage, especially with his main attack being kind of slow, so when you do hit your shot, hey, you want to be dealing as much damage as possible. And then finally run the gadget charge gear. Walking Cane is so important with Gray, it's very helpful, so having another Walking Cane gadget can really help you in some clutch situations. Now the next brawler we're going to talk about is going to be RT. Without a doubt, RT is probably one of the best gadgets in the game, and that's going to be hacks. As long as enemies are marked up, they're guaranteed going to be taking that damage, and there's nothing they can do about it. For the star power, definitely go quick maths. Being able to have the marks last 3 seconds longer just gives you and your teammates more time to hit shots while they're marked. And the first gear we're going to talk about is going to be the damage gear. Being able to just amplify the amount of damage that you can do whenever the enemies are marked, hey, you can't go wrong with that. And then finally, with hacks being, like I said, one of the best gadgets in the game, why wouldn't you go gadget charge and get another one? I mean, it's like a Mickey Mouse gadget. Alright, the next brawler we're going to talk about is going to be Willow. For the gadget, run Spellbound. This is just a great gadget if you can guarantee hit your next shot and deal all of that damage instead of over time. And for the star power, Spellbound pairs up very well with Love is Blind. This is just great because whenever you hit anybody with your main attacks, it's just going to reduce the reload speed of affected brawlers by 25%, which will give your team a huge advantage. For the gears, the first one I'm going to recommend is going to be the damage gear. Willow is actually a very underrated brawler because of how much damage she can do over time. So if you can amplify that even more with the damage gear, you got to take it. And then finally run the shield gear. She is a thrower in a very aggressive meta, so running the shield gear, giving you the extra health, can help her against those aggro brawlers. Now the next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Doug. For the gadget, definitely run extra mustard. Being able to deal double the damage with your next main attack can really surprise the enemies and get you a lot of kills. For the star power, run self-service. Just being able to heal up yourself every single time you use your attack by an additional 20%, that's going to help you stay alive as well. Now for the gears, the first one is going to be the speed gear. Doug doesn't really run the fastest, he has a terrible main attack range, so running through the bushes, getting faster and getting closer to the enemies will help Doug as well. And then finally, the other gear you guys want to be using is going to be the damage gear. This will amplify the amount of healing, the amount of damage that you do, so it's going to help Doug as well. I mean, he's probably one of the worst brawlers, so yeah, damage is what he needs. Now the next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Chuck. This is just a great gadget. You can kind of surprise enemies and get through the map a lot quicker when you can go through walls. For the star power, use Pit Stop. Being able to place down additional posts, especially when you're playing on those longer heist maps, can really help you. You don't have to be like running all over the place. You can just place down an extra post and travel that way. Now for the gears, the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the damage gear. Most of the time, the enemies are going to be camping at the end of your super, so if you can take damage damage on purpose and then travel through the high save, you're going to be dealing loads of damage. And then finally use the gadget charge gear. Being able to have another gadget where you can go through the walls with your super A, that's going to help you in a lot of clutch situations. The next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Charlie. For the gadget, even though it's been nerfed a lot, still use spiders. Being able to spawn in those spiders can help you tank some damage or even scout the bushes, kind of like a Mr. P porter. And then for the star power, it's still better to run digestive. Whenever the enemies break out of the cocoon, they lose 25% of their total health, and that can just help Charlie and her teammates take down that enemy that much quicker. Now for the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the gadget charge gear. Even if you don't want to listen to me and you don't want to use spiders, hey, having another spiders gadget to use to tank shots for you or scout the bushes is going to help Charlie out quite a bit. And then finally run the damage gear. Charlie doesn't deal a whole ton of damage. You can kind of think of her like Carl. You gotta wait for her main attack to come back. So if you can really be efficient with your main attacks and deal more damage, you're gonna be winning more games. And of course, we can't forget about Charlie's hypercharge pestilence. The cocoon ends up spawning 3 spiders right there alone. So technically, you already have another spiders gadget right there with that hypercharge. Now the next brawler we're gonna talk about is gonna be Miko. For his gadget, use Clipping Scream. This is just a clutch gadget because not only can you deal damage to the enemies, but it's very important to slow down the enemy for 2 seconds every time you hit them. For the star power, use Monkey Business. I absolutely love this star power, and without it, he'd be totally trash because every 5 seconds, Miko's basic attack steals ammo from his enemies. So technically, if you could steal ammo from the opponents, that just gives you another shot to go ahead and deal damage to them, and this can actually get you a lot more kills. For the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the damage gear. Since you need to be literally jumping directly on top of the enemies, yes, damage gear is going to be helpful so you can do more damage since you're going to be lowered. And since you're going to be going aggressive like every single time, it's helpful to run the shield gear too. Having that additional damage while you're jumping in can help you stay alive just a little bit longer and hopefully get you more kills. And of course, we can't forget about his garbage hypercharge sound check. It's not really the most helpful unless you can actually hit your super every single time, but if you can, you can stun the enemies for 1.5 seconds, which good for you, I guess. Now the next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be the newest brawler in the game, Melody. Without a doubt, Interlude is going to be the better gadget. It is just basically going to make you unkillable because you gain a 50% shield from each note orbiting her. This just gives her an incredibly high health shield, and you can just run aggressive into the enemy's faces and not die. And for the star powers, you gotta use fast beats. Melody will gain an 80% increased movement speed from each note orbiting her, which makes her an incredibly difficult brawler to hit. Now, since Interlude is such a great gadget, why not use the gadget charge gear? Having another gadget where you can gain another 3,000 health, it might even be more than that, is incredibly disgusting. And then finally, even though Melody doesn't do the most amount of damage with the main attack, it will be helpful to run the damage gear. Even though it won't increase it a whole ton, just being able to deal the extra damage, it can help you finish off some enemies. Moving into the legendaries, the first one we're going to be talking about is going to be Spike. For the gadget, definitely run Life Plan. This can help you tank shots, and when it's destroyed, it can heal up you and your teammates. It's just a great gadget in general. And then for the star powers, one of the most annoying ones in the game is going to be Curveball. Just basically having the cactus grenades fly in a curving motion, it just makes it easier to hit the targets and harder for the enemies to dodge. Now for the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the shield gear. Spike does not have a whole ton of health, so running the shield gear, giving him extra 900 health can help him stay alive. And then finally, you gotta be using the Sticky Spikes mythic gear. Spike super slows down the enemies 30% more effectively, which makes it that much more difficult for them to escape it. Combine this with this hypercharged blooming season where you increase the super's radius by an additional 20%. So not only is it going to be incredibly slow, but it's going to be a lot bigger, making it more difficult for the enemies to escape it. Our next legendary we're going to talk about is going to be Crow. Now for Crow, the better gadget is still going to be Slowing Toxin. Even though this gadget has been nerfed into the ground, being able to slow down the enemies for 2 seconds, whenever you have an ability where you can slow down the enemy in the game, you have to use it. As far as the star power goes, what better star power can you use than Extra Toxic? Being able to just sap the strength of the enemies, they'll end up dealing 15% less damage while they're poisoned, and that gives your team a huge advantage. For the gears, the first one I want to recommend is going to be the gadget charge gear. Whether if you don't want to listen to me and you want to use defense booster, or you want to listen to me and use slowing toxins, you can't go wrong with either of Crow's gadgets, so go ahead and get another one. And then the other gear you guys gotta use is gonna be his mythic gear Enduring Toxins. Increase Crow's poison damage by another 30%. That's gonna help you chip down the enemy and just frustrate them that much more. And now Crow actually has his hypercharged utility knives. It isn't the greatest hypercharge because it takes a while to charge up, but if you can manage to hit it on top of like a stationary target, you can do a lot of damage. Our next brawler we're gonna be talking about is gonna be Leon. Now for the gadget, run Lollipop Drop. Being able to kind of just place down that lollipop and hide your teammates in a little bit of an invisibility super, it's so great for area control. For the star power, run an Invisi Heal, healing up 1360 health per second while his super is active. It pairs very well with his hypercharge. And his hypercharge is going to be Limbo, where he stays invisible even while he's attacking. so you get the buff of the movement speed from the hypercharge, and you're still invisible healing up because of the Invisi-Heal star power. It's a deadly combination. Now for the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the damage gear. Now that Leon actually did get a nerf to his proximity damage, being able to have the damage gear give him that extra damage back, it kind of evens things out. And then finally, you gotta use his mythic gear, Lingering Smoke. Being able to increase his super by an additional 2 seconds, I mean, why not? Especially now that he has a broken hypercharge that pairs very well with Invisi-Heal. The next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Sandy. For the gadget, 100% you still need to be using Sweet Dreams, kind of stunning the enemy for that entire second. It feels like eternity, and that can help you and your team gain control. For the star powers, you gotta use Rude Sands. For the longest time, I actually loved Healing Winds, but Rude Sands is so good because you can constantly see where the enemies are and prevent them from healing. For the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the gadget charge gear. Since Sweet Dreams is so important to Sandy's kit, you gotta be using it and getting an extra Sweet Dreams gadget. And then finally, it wouldn't hurt you to run the speed gear too. You want to be playing Sandy on bushy maps so you can get closer to the enemy since he doesn't have the longest attack range, so yeah, go ahead and use the speed gear. And of course, we can't forget Sandy's hypercharged Swift Winds. This is what has shot him up into being one of the best brawlers. Like, he gets the increased movement speed and he can silence enemies for that half a second. I mean, it's so broken. The next brawler we're going to be talking about is going to be Amber. For the gadget, run Dancing Flames. Even though this gadget has been nerfed, it's still great because it lasts for 5 seconds, and if the enemies do get hit, they'll take 2100 damage every single time. For the star power, run Wild Flames. Being able to place down multiple fuel puddles on the ground, it can help you guys maintain control on the map because nobody's going to want to walk on top of it. Now, something that makes Amber even more annoying to deal with is the fact that she has the reload gear. Since Amber actually has only that 1 bar of ammo, and it kind of teaches players about ammo conservity, having that reload gear would just help her maintain ammo at least a little bit. And then finally, run the damage gear with Amber. Since Sticky Oil has been nerfed quite a bit, having the extra damage is going to help Amber just shred the enemies that much faster. The next brawler I'm going to be talking about is going to be Meg. For Meg, use the Toolbox gadget. Meg will end up dropping her toolbox and increasing the reload speed for nearby allies by 35%, and that is just a great support gadget for Meg's team. For the star power, run Force Field. Meg will be protected by a 25% shield for 10 seconds when her mech is destroyed, and hey, hopefully that's going to be enough time for you to charge up your next mech. For the gears, the first one is going to be the damage gear. Whether if you're in the mech or in Meg's normal form, you can't go wrong with getting more damage, obviously. And then finally, run the shield gear. It'll help your mech stay alive a lot longer, or even Meg in her normal form stay alive a lot longer. So yeah, shield gear is going to help her out all the time. The next brawler is going to be my favorite, Surge. For Surge, it's actually going to be better to run Power Surge instead of Power Shield. Power Surge will just give you that additional upgrade for the next 10 seconds, which hopefully will help you get at least your next stage. For the star power, it's still better to run Serve Ice Cold. Especially if you're playing in 3v3s, you get to keep that first stage every single time you die for the full duration of the match. I mean, it's an absolute steal. For the gear, since Surge moves so slow, you gotta use the speed gear. Take advantage of those bushes, run through them, and get closer to the enemies, and it pairs very well with his Power Surge gadget too. And then finally, you can't go wrong with running damage gear too. Surge already does quite a bit of damage, but if he can do even more damage, he can 2 or 3 tap a lot of the brawlers in the game too. The next legendary we're going to talk about is going to be Chester. For the gadget, run Candy Beans. Honestly, both of these gadgets are pretty trash, but Candy Beans is going to at least be better than Spicy Dice. But hey, he does have a very good star power, and that is going to be Bellomania. Being able to have that extra stage where he has the 4 bells attack, oh my god, he can deal so much more damage instead of it just being 1, 2, 3 and then back to 1. For the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be the speed gear. Take advantage of bushes because Chester does need to be getting close to the enemy so he can hit multiple bells. And then finally use the damage gear too. Chester isn't the greatest legendary in the game, so if he can take advantage of getting a damage buff and dealing more damage to get more kills, hey, he gotta take it. The next legendary we're going to talk about is going to be Cordelius. For the gadget, this is going to be controversial, but Poison Mushroom is actually going to be better now. The reason being is you can't use replanting in the Shadow Realm anymore, which is going to make it a lot more useless. And then for the star power, run Combo Shrooms. This one is also going to be very controversial, but actually dealing an extra 30% damage every single time you hit the second mushroom will not only help you defeat the enemies quicker, but help you charge up more supers a lot faster. For the gears, the first one you guys gotta use is going to be the damage gear. Run the damage gear because this pairs very well with Combo Shrooms, and it'll just help you guys deal so much damage every single attack. And then finally use the gadget charge gear. Whether if you want to listen to me and use Poison Mushrooms or you don't and you still want to use replanting, you can't go wrong with either gadget. And finally, the reason why Cordelius is one of the best brawlers in the game is because of his hypercharge Complete Darkness. Being able to slow down the enemies when they're in the Shadow Realm, I mean, there's like no way the enemies are going to be able to outrun him. And last but not least, the last brawler is going to be Kit. For Kit, run the Cardboard Box gadget. Even though it has been fixed where the bug, you can't just run around and still would go invisible, it's still going to be better than Cheeseburger. That's more for showdown. And then finally, use the overly attached star power. This one is going to be better for 3v3s, and Power Hungry is going to be more for showdown. So I'm sure you can piece together which one's for 3v3 and which one's for showdown. And then for the gears, the first one I want to talk about is going to be damage. Kit doesn't do a whole ton of damage, so when he does get lowered and he gets closer to the enemies, and even when he's in his Yarn Balls form, he can always benefit from taking more damage. Whether if Kit is going to be in his Yarn Balls form or in his normal form, he can always benefit from dealing more damage. And then finally, with Cardboard Box actually being pretty good for him, I guess, then you can run the Gadget Charge gear too. For Lily, you want to use the Vanish Gadget. Being able to go into the Shadow Realm for the next 3 seconds, you can make some unbelievable plays, sneaking up onto the enemies and just repositioning throughout the match. Use the Spiky Star Power because you can deal that extra damage whenever you use your super. This will just help you finish off the enemies a lot quicker and just keep Lily alive. First gear I'm going to recommend is going to be the damage gear. Go ahead and use damage because when you're getting close to the enemies, you're probably going to be dropping in health, so you might as well get that extra damage buff to help you finish off that enemy. And finally, go ahead and use the Gadget Charge gear. Having another Vanish Gadget, I mean, you can't go wrong. It's probably one of the best gadgets in the game. Now for Draco, use the Last Stand gadget. This gadget is basically like keeping Draco alive for the next 2 seconds, and he can definitely get down some enemies when he should be dead. Next, go ahead and use the Shredding Star Power. If you can constantly cycle up your super while you have the star power, you can easily gain 2,750 health every time, and it'll help you just keep on going aggressive. The first gear I'm going to recommend for Draco is going to be the damage gear. Draco can benefit from getting the damage gear activated since he doesn't deal a whole lot of damage unless you're at that max distance away. And then finally, use the Gadget Charge gear because running Last Stand, I mean, is probably one of the best things about Draco's kit besides like his super, obviously. For Barry, you want to run the Friendship is Great gadget. This is going to be a great gadget to either heal yourself up and heal your teammates, or if you need to knock back aggressive brawlers to buy yourself time, hey, that's another great way to use this gadget. For the star power, you definitely want to use Floor is Fine. With this star power, Barry gains 50% increased reload speed when standing in his own ice cream puddle. This will just help Barry maintain control of the map that much more because you're going to be getting more ammo, thus helping you fire more ice cream. Now the first gear I'm going to recommend for Barry is going to be the speed gear. You can run the speed gear because he can definitely benefit from moving a little bit quicker when running through the bushes. And then finally for Barry, run the damage gear. Barry doesn't deal a lot of damage, but if he does drop below 50% health, he will also be able to deal not only the extra damage but also heal him and his teammates that much more. For Clancy, you want to be using the Snappy Shooting gadget. Clancy will gain double tokens for the next 5 seconds, and this is going to be very helpful for those of you guys out there that really struggle with staging up with Clancy. For star power, you need to be running Recon. The hardest part about playing Clancy is getting to that second stage. Well, now with this star power, Clancy will start the match with 3 additional tokens for free. Now the first gear I'm going to recommend for Clancy is going to be the speed gear. Now unless you can get Clancy's 3rd stage pretty quickly, he's going to need the speed gear. If you're playing on maps with a lot of bushes and walls, then the speed gear can really come in handy for you. And then the other gear I recommend for Clancy is going to be the damage gear. Clancy already does so much damage, but if he for whatever reason drops below 50% health, hey, dealing that extra damage, there's nobody in the game that's going to be able to survive his super. For Mo, use the Dodgy Digging gadget. Being able to increase your super charge rate by the next 50% for 5 seconds is huge for helping Mo charge up his super. Especially with him getting nerfed recently, he's definitely going to need this. For the star power, run Skipping Stones. Since his main attacks can be hard to get consistent damage with, sometimes having that extra stone may help you get more damage off. Even though the range of the attack remains the same, you can't go wrong with dealing more damage with that additional stone. For the gears, the first one I'm going to recommend is going to be the damage gear. Mo doesn't deal a lot of damage, but when he gets close to his enemies and he's going aggro in his driller, he can definitely benefit from the damage gear. And then finally go ahead and use the shield gear. When Mo is going aggressive in his driller form or when he's being pressured hard, he can always benefit from getting that extra 900 health. Now for Kenji, you gotta be using the Hosomaki healing gadget. Even though this gadget got nerfed, he can still instantly heal 50% of damage taken over the last 3 seconds. This gadget is still going to help him stay alive even though it's not as good as it used to be. For the star power, you have to use Nagiri Nemesis. Getting that 90% damage reduction shield is going to be huge to help Kenji stay alive and tank for his team. The first gear I'm going to recommend for Kenji is going to be the damage gear. Kenji is an assassin brawler. When he's going aggressive, he can always benefit from dealing more damage when he's getting lowered by the enemies. And when Kenji's going aggressive, he can also benefit from the shield gear. Especially with the Kenji apocalypse right now, you can't go wrong with going the shield gear and you might be able to win a 1v1 engagement against another Kenji.